The great outdoors, it's enjoyed by just about everyone. The simple act of just going outside, putting one foot in front of the other, and taking in what's around you. A chance to find peace in your surroundings. However, the opportunity and access to the countryside is more of a complicated issue than you'd expect, with only 8% of the land in England actually being accessible. More and more wealthy landowners are closing off their beauty spots to the public. Some activists want to do something about it. Hikers and ramblers take to the countryside regularly. It's a hobby for millions, and for others, it's more than just a hobby. It's a lifeline. I don't think there's much debate about how physically and mentally good it is for you. I joined the Ramblers for a few hikes, and I met this man. A living example of how transformative access to nature can be for people. Malcolm has been walking with his local rambling group for around 30 years and has led well over 1,000 walks.
I was born in Aldershot and I've lived in the area most of my life. Didn't start rambling until I was 50. When I retired in 2000, I joined this group and I've been out 3 or 4 times a week with them ever since. And also I'm a great walk leader. I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but it's true.
Before Malcolm joined the Ramblers and started hiking, his story was completely different.
Well, I used to be a very heavy drinker. I mean, really very heavy drinker. Up until about the age of 50, and I had to go into hospital for 3 months to get over that. And when I came out, I was at a bit of a loss to what to do, because I used to spend every day at the pub. And I thought I'd join a rambling group just to give me something to do. And I'd always been quite a walker anyway, but nothing planned, just out with the dog and doing things like that. And I found it was a great help to me because it gave me something to do instead of going down the pub.
So what are Ramblers? I met up with the chairman of the Winchester Ramblers to find out what they do and the work they put in.
We do everything from like a 3-mile walk for those that aren't able to walk so far or don't have so much time to walk, right up to 11 plus miles. So we make sure there's a full programme that runs all through the year. We work with Hampshire County Council on keeping rights of way open, making sure they're in good condition. The path we're on today is a little bit muddy, but not too bad, but if things get impassable, we'll try and work with them to see what we can do about them. So as a committee, that's sort of issues that we try and push and make sure they're being done, so it's not just turned into a walking club.
These walks have been a revelation to me.
Have they?
Oh yes.
How come?
Well, I think because you realise all the wonderful places that there are around, actually, that you just drive past.
Do you know, like 20, 30 years ago, I honestly would have thought, if you were out on a walk and you see these groups of maybe older people, I'd have thought, I didn't want to do that. Go round in a great group together. When you get a little bit older, that is a brilliant idea. Let's all do it together. It's much more fun.
It's mainly about people sort of chatting together and the sociable side of it, and of course just getting out. And people are lovely to go with. We're such a friendly bunch.
Yeah, it relaxes your mind while you're relaxing, just having a walk, or even if it's a difficult walk or anything, it relaxes your mind. And I think that's a very good thing. Even though a lot of people are retired, you still sort of got things on your mind.
What made you want to join?
I retired basically, and needed to get out and do some exercise and meet some other people. That ticks the box.
We have a lot of people who are widowed or separated or just lonely when they're older, and this is the one big social group that they have. And they'll go out walking regularly. It's a group of friends that they make, and it breaks down that loneliness barrier, which is a real problem for a lot of people in this country.
It's good for physical health, keeps you fit, but also I think it's very good for people's mental health in terms of coming out and just on a day like this where you can hear the birds and sort of it's just, I don't think it can be anything but relaxing and good for people.
I had a nervous breakdown about just over a year ago, and I was very close to committing suicide. It was really serious. But getting out with the Ramblers is one of the things that got me through it. I'm all right now because, you know, I'm on medication for it, but it was a close run thing. I was really bad with that, but I have a long history of that, so I'm used to it. It's just getting out and meeting friends and walking and chatting and talking about your problems. Not always my problems, but other people have problems as well. And it helps, you know, it really does help. But, yeah.
There is an ever-growing mental and physical health crisis, not just in this country, but around the world. And there are so many studies which stress how important just being outside can be.
Nature is like essential, or we need a connection to nature for our mental health, our spiritual health, physical health, and that's been shown like consistently, especially even more so since lockdown.
I spoke to Marie from Right to Roam, a campaign focused on keeping nature accessible to the public.
I think there's a real like unstoppable like desire or yearning or need for people to reconnect. I think people are understanding that as well, the cause, because, you know, that nature connection is spoken about a lot, but like the fact that we're only able to access 8% of the country, yeah, I think people are a bit shocked by that once they start looking into it. So I do believe the tide is shifting. I'm obviously on this side of the argument, so I appreciate that I'm being surrounded by people who also agree with me, but it's the new faces and people who are coming in fresh, who are sharing these opinions as well, which is making me feel like, yeah, when people hear about the campaign on a moral standpoint, like from the very base, it makes sense. If you have 1,000-acre woodland in your land, like you own that, and you also own heathland, or you own a bunch of rivers, like it's ridiculous to be able to shut people off from that, and I think people are really starting to see that that is ridiculous.
If you look at most areas, if you're going at walking or in a car or in a train, you look at woods, you look at open spaces, and you often see a fence around it saying private, keep out. No, there's no reason that that the vast majority of the population shouldn't have reasonable access to it. A statistic that the Ramblers have recently produced demonstrates that the people of Kent have only got access to 0.6% of the land in Kent. Now that's an appalling statistic.
A lot of what I used to consider was open access, although it was private land, you know, it wasn't fenced and you could just wander through it, but now it's all fenced off and we're losing quite a lot of land like that. I mean, there is stock, we're lucky round here. We've got a lot of forestry commission land and there's still a lot of military land we can get to. So there is a lot of open access, but it's not as much as it used to be. And it's a one-way street, because once something's closed off and fenced, it's never opened up again. You know? So every time you lose something, it's basically gone forever. We've lost a lot of land. Some of it wasn't really, you know, it wasn't officially open access land as such, but these big estates and that, they had so much land that if it was a few people walking through it, nobody bothered about it. But what you quite often find is that if it changes hands, a new owner might buy a land with, you know, 40 acres of woodland or something, and the first thing they want to do is say, oh, this is my land, keep off, and it's all fenced. Now, they're quite entitled to do that, because they do own it, but, you know, if you're used to walking on it and suddenly it's fenced, it's, you know, that's another bit gone, and it then never comes back.
This issue is starting to appear more and more in the public eye. Earlier this year, demonstrations were launched in Dartmoor, a national park in Devon, after the landowners of the site banned wild camping. This launched the biggest demonstrations of its kind since the 1980s, with around 3,000 people turning up.
Wild camping, I think something that was in existence and then was taken away, I think really highlighted how fragile the situation is, and I think because there was one sort of stronghold left, there was not really a sense of urgency, because I guess at least people were like, well, at least you can do it there. And I think then to kind of, for that to sit in your head a little bit and to be like, wait, so I can't pitch a tent anywhere in the UK. I can't just go and enjoy a night in nature. I think that really struck people. And I think because, yeah, as I say, it was like this the last stronghold, I guess, of like wild camping then got taken. I don't think people realised how bad the situation was until that last bit was gone.
So something needs to change, and I'm glad that the Ramblers is fully committed to that, and that was one of the principles on which it was founded. It came out of the 1931-33 activities around the mass trespass Kinder Scout in the Peak District, which was the basic campaign for the large country estates in the Peak District to be accessible to people who lived in the major cities of Sheffield and Manchester and Liverpool. It's changed slightly, the emphasis, but it's a campaign that still goes on today.
So what's being done in the campaign today, and what do they hope to achieve in the future? Right to Roam believe that decisive actions like Dartmoor, like Kinder Scout, are needed in order to achieve anything.
Last year we had like 4 or 5 big trespasses organised by the national team. So we're trying to empower people in different areas to get to know their own local landscape, to kind of discover not just estates, but, you know, which little rivers are on private land, and like these hidden woodlands and like what's in them. And just people, especially in the cities, to kind of expand out and know what's around them, getting that sort of sense of where they are. So the aim of the trespass is bring people together and highlight something, highlight, you know, either the ridiculousness of the fact that this person owns all this land and doesn't let people on, or is trying to take away people's rights. We're trying to connect in other ways this year, so we are going to connect with NHS workers and do a sort of protest with them and talk about, you know, the benefits of nature and how actually if people have access to nature, maybe the NHS wouldn't be so strained.
The Ramblers have a different approach.
Well, as Ramblers Association, we work within the law, we work with authorities, we work with landowners, going right back to our roots. That's what we've done. Even back to the days of the mass trespasses, the Ramblers Association in its kind of embryonic form was against that at the time. If we start to go outside the law as an association, we destroy our credibility and our influence with government and local authorities, so we need to be really careful about that. So I don't think trespass is the answer there, but I can understand the feelings of the people who are organising these trespasses and taking part in them. There's a lot of anger out there. There's a lot of rowing back by the government on the rights they said they were going to be giving people to the countryside. They're rowing back on that now. So yeah, it makes all of us angry, but we need to work within the law to try and stop that.
However, if we switch the perspective to the landowner's side, then you have to ask yourself, if you owned a field or a plot of land in the countryside, would you be too happy having a consistent flow of people walking directly through your land, right next to your crops, or wild camping on fields that you own and leaving a mess? Since I wasn't able to find a landowner to speak to, I asked Pete why landowners want to fence off their land.
They fall into 2 categories, I would say. There's the farmer, where there's a footpath that runs right across, diagonally across the middle of the farm, or the field. Many years ago, in the deep and distant path, it was probably 2 separate fields, but as farms have got bigger, as fields have got bigger, the boundaries have got taken out. And to be blunt, it is a lot easier for a farmer if they're ploughing in the big tractors and or harvesting. it's a lot easier for them to go over it. Then you get the people who don't like the fact that the ancient footpath goes through there or overlooks their large country estate or their big mansion round here, and that's the two categories that people fall into.
I'm sure we've all seen problems, particularly during the lockdown period, where people were out in the countryside because there was nothing else to do. You couldn't go to a bar, so they took all their cans out to the countryside and their picnic and barbecue, and they just leave everything. I've seen in the middle of nowhere a gazebo, loads of camping chairs, just abandoned barbecue, sacks and sacks of rubbish that of course have just been torn aside and torn apart by the foxes and things. Just awful. And you can see why farmers, landowners and other walkers react and say, you know, we need to stop people having access to these areas because of the damage they cause. The thing is, that's always going to be caused by a very small minority of people. You know, most people go out and they don't drop stuff, they take stuff with them. You can see the area we're in at the moment, and it's pristine, there's no rubbish anywhere. And that's true for most of the countryside. My feeling is that people who go wild camping and cause problems will do so whether it's against the law or not. But they do it already whether it's against the law or not. So I don't think changing the law to stop it really helps. Ultimately there's no answer to that. People are people, they will do what they do. I do feel sorry for landowners when you see the stuff that's been left, particularly in a field with animals in, horses and other animals who just eat anything they find, which can be a problem.
It's something that comes up in Scotland, where they were promoting walking routes, and then some of the local authorities were saying, oh well, people are leaving rubbish and people are sort of leaving detritus behind. And the question is well, okay, what provision have you made for them? And that's part of the bargain, I think, that you open up an area and then you make it so people can enjoy, but at the same time you make it clear how you expect them to enjoy it, and you make provision so that they're not leaving a mess. I think there are very few people who would set out with the idea that they would deliberately trash an area of beauty that they've taken time to go out to.
As we've seen throughout this documentary, the countryside can provide a multitude of benefits for our mental and physical well-being. The peace and tranquility, the connection to nature and sense of community. However, in some cases the arguments from landowners are valid. They do just want to protect their land from potential damage or litter which can affect the delicate ecosystems. With Dartmoor and other legal cases still in proceedings, and the issue of land access being talked about more and more, it'll be interesting to see how the situation develops in the future.